everyone? It's Flynn Patrick once again, and in this video, I will be explaining why I think the Brooklyn Nets will make the playoffs in the 2018-2019 season. This is going to be a new series, and during the month of September, we have a lot of exciting and big announcements to make. But in this series, we are going to highlight some teams that I think could potentially perform above or below expectations. Long story short, I think the Golden State Warriors are the clear favorite to win the 2019 NBA championship. But other than that, I think the rest of the NBA could be more of a madhouse than maybe casual NBA fans are thinking right now. I think the potential is there for a lot of teams to surprise this upcoming season. And this is a prediction where some fans are going to think I have lost my bananas and there is no way in Holy Toledo that the Brooklyn Nets will make the playoffs. But with some of the overall changes that have happened in the league this offseason, I do think the potential is there for the Brooklyn Nets to be a big time surprise team, and I think the door is wide open for them to make an impact in the NBA next season. So to start, let's just take a look at the Eastern Conference overall. For next year, my prediction is I think right now there are 6 teams that are a lock for playoff spots. The first 2 are obvious, Toronto and Boston. I think they're both going to contend for a potential spot in the NBA Finals. Philadelphia with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. I think Washington is a lock for the playoffs. John Wall is a low-key superstar. I think Dwight Howard is a good fit for this team. I don't think they're going to win the NBA Finals by any means, but I think Washington's a lock for the playoffs at least. I like what Indiana did this offseason, and I think Indiana is a lock for the playoffs. And also, of course, Milwaukee with Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think barring a major injury to him, Milwaukee is also a near lock for the playoffs. With those 6 teams, that leaves 2 spots open in the Eastern Conference. I think one of these spots is going to go to Miami. I don't necessarily think they are going to be higher than a 7 or an 8 seed. That being said, they did retain like their whole team pretty much. The team chemistry is there. I don't think they're going to make it past the first round, but I do think Miami will probably make the playoffs. So that's number 7. The 7 teams that I currently have in the playoffs all made the playoffs last year. So this 8th spot is open for obvious reasons, and that is because LeBron James is no longer on the Cleveland Cavaliers, obviously making the Cleveland Cavaliers no longer a lock for the playoffs. So here's how the rest of the Eastern Conference looks. I think there's like near 0 chance Orlando or Atlanta makes the playoffs. I think barring an absolute miracle, I don't think New York is going to make the playoffs either. So that leaves 5 contenders, and these contenders are Brooklyn, the Charlotte Hornets, the Chicago Bulls, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the Detroit Pistons. Now let's go over each of the contenders briefly. Detroit, I do like the Dwayne Casey hire. I like Blake Griffin and Andre Drummond together. I'm rooting for them to succeed. That being said, there are a lot of question marks on that roster overall. I think they need to make some changes at the trade deadline to shake that roster up if they want to have a shot at the playoffs this year. Otherwise, even if they had a bad year, I really think they need a high draft pick anyways, but I just don't have a good feeling about Detroit making the playoffs, and really the only reason I included them on these 5 contenders is because I do like the Dwayne Casey hire, and the national media is giving them a chance, although I really don't think they have much of one. The Cleveland Cavaliers, who obviously made the NBA Finals last year, but LeBron James is no longer on that team. I do like Kevin Love's individual potential next year. I do like Colin Sexton as a rookie. That being said, I just don't think they're going to make the playoffs next year. I do think that they could stay in contention for that 8th spot, especially with playoff experience on that roster. I just don't think that roster is built enough for them to make the playoffs. So that leaves 3 teams with Brooklyn, Charlotte, and Chicago. Let's quickly go over Chicago. Now this is a team I do really like their long-term potential. Lauri Markkanen, the Wendell Carter Jr. draft pick is good. I think Jabari Parker, if healthy, could surprise folks in Chicago. He's in his hometown. He's going to be playing more motivated. I think Jabari Parker is a really, really good signing for Chicago. I have some questions about their backcourt. If Zach LaVine's healthy, that could definitely help them. And Chris Dunn did improve last year. If those two continue to develop, I do think Chicago could make the playoffs this year. I'm not the biggest fan of their depth necessarily, but I do think Chicago does have a chance, although I really like them more going into next decade more so than this year. Now, in terms of the Charlotte Hornets, I don't think they really got worse. I don't necessarily think they got much better either. That being said, I think Kemba Walker is absolutely going to go off this year. He is by far the clear #1 scoring option on that team. I think Malik Monk is going to improve. Nicholas Batum, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, Cody Zeller, Frank Kaminsky, all solid. Miles Bridges is a solid draft pick. I just don't think they improved enough to where they are going to make that jump into the playoffs. So that leaves the Brooklyn Nets, and as this video states, my early prediction is that the Brooklyn Nets will make the playoffs in 2018 and 2019, and the rest of this video is going to be explaining why I think that is. So the last couple of seasons, the Brooklyn Nets have really, not even arguably, have been the most irrelevant team in the NBA. They've been in purgatory. Boston had all of their draft picks, and they haven't been the most exciting team to watch. That being said, the Nets did improve last year, and I believe that with the way the roster is set up, I think they are going to continue to improve, and because of what's going on in the East, as well as their continued improvement as well, I think the door is wide open for them to be a big time surprise NBA team. And the big part of this is because the culture of the team has changed big time because of the shakeup in management and in the front office. Sean Marks for the Nets as a GM has done a terrific job, in my opinion, of doing the best he can to turn this team around. He's come from the Spurs organization, and he won an NBA championship in 2005 as a player and 2014 as an assistant coach. It's taken him a little bit to get that Nets team in the right direction, but he's been making moves. He made the D'Angelo Russell Brook Lopez trade last year, which I think has worked out somewhat well for them so far. And he made moves this past off season as well. Not only that, but the Nets are finally out of the draft pick purgatory that they were in before. So if they did do terrible this year, they have the potential to get a high draft pick. And honestly, that might even be better for their future. I think Sean Marks has improved this team enough to where they are going to make the playoffs. He wants to win now, and he has been very open about the fact that he wants to win now. The team improved by 8 wins last year, and he said he was not satisfied with that, and he wants this team to win more next year. This does not sound like the mindset of a team that plans on tanking next year. I think they are going to try to win as many games as possible. The front office is going full force to turn that franchise into a winning culture, and the players like hanging out with each other. There were some roster changes this offseason, but I think Sean Marks and company set this team up really well for success next year. So let's take a look at this roster to see why I think this team will be the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference next year. First of all, the point guards. D'Angelo Russell, he is the key piece for this franchise. They made a big time trade for him last offseason. Last year, I thought he started off the season really well, and then he got injured, and things just got a little awkward because Spencer Dinwiddie took that starting point guard spot while he was out. Dinwiddie played excellent while Russell was out. Then Russell came back, and the coaching staff just kind of had a conundrum because they didn't really know what to do there. I'll be honest, I don't think they handled it the best. They were like putting Dinwiddie at shooting guard for a little bit, then they brought him off the bench. And I understand that D'Angelo Russell is the centerpiece, but when he did come back from injury, I don't think he played at the same level he played in the short time before he got injured. I think if Russell had been healthy a whole season, I think he could have been a top 70-ish overall NBA player. Instead, I had him ranked as the number 121 overall NBA player last year. He still has a lot of potential. He is a former number 2 pick. He is still only 23 years old, so the potential is still there for him to develop. If he stays healthy all of next season, and if he can play like he did the whole season, like he did at the beginning of last year, I think big things could happen for D'Angelo Russell next year and the Brooklyn Nets. And they have Spencer Dinwiddie at point guard too. When D'Angelo Russell got injured, Spencer Dinwiddie had an opportunity to prove himself, and he did. I even had him ranked as a top 100 player overall during certain points last year. Now, as I said, when D'Angelo Russell came back, his role just got kind of awkward. He didn't play as well as he did before. He ultimately finished outside of my top 120 as well, finishing number 124. Which got a shout out from Spencer Dinwiddie on Twitter, so shout out to him for that. But I think if Dinwiddie is accepting of that second string point guard role, is accepting of being the floor general off the bench, then I think this could be a really, really valuable piece for the Brooklyn Nets, because he is going to be one of the best second string point guards in the NBA. I'm a big fan of him. I'm biased towards him because he tweeted at us. So I'd like to see him do really well for the Nets. But if that doesn't work out, they also have Shabazz Napier as a third string point guard, who I thought played really well for Portland last year. And I think Shabazz Napier is arguably the best third string point guard in the NBA. He low-key had the best season of his career last year in Portland. He was a huge offensive spark off the bench for that Portland Trail Blazers team. And I think this was a good signing by Brooklyn because it gives them flexibility if they wanted to trade someone like Spencer Dinwiddie. But either way, I hope all three of these players do well. Now let's take a look at the wings. Allen Crabbe. I like him. He scored a career high 13 points a game last season. His shooting efficiency needs to improve, but that being said, there were some nights where he just went completely off. And if that shooting efficiency can improve, Allen Crabbe can be a serious player next year. We also have Caris LeVert, who was the Nets' first round pick a couple of seasons ago. And you know what? I liked what I saw out of him last year as well. I thought he made big time progression, especially in the areas of playmaking and three-point shooting. I think he offers the Nets a lot of versatility, and I think he could potentially be the Nets' full-time starting shooting guard sooner rather than later if he continues to progress during the early parts of this upcoming season. He has nice athleticism, and he had some really nice scoring games during the second part of the season. I really like Caris LeVert, and I think if he plays up to his potential and if the Nets improve like I think they will, I think he could be like a top 125 type player overall next year, if not even higher if everything goes right. Joe Harris, very solid player, efficient shooter, shooting 42% from the three-point land last year. Great guy to have in the locker room, is accepting of his role as a scorer off the bench, and he has low-key athleticism too. Joe Harris is a nice piece for this Nets team. He played well last year, and I think he will continue to play well next year. I think he is a top 200 player in the NBA type talent. We have DeMarre Carroll, who averaged a career high in points a game last year. I thought he played well. Sports Illustrated actually ranked him as the number 95 player overall going into next year. I do think he offers a lot of flexibility on the offensive and defensive ends. He's a veteran. He's been in the NBA for 10 seasons now, and I also met him once. I met him about 3 years ago. He was nice enough to take a picture with me, but he wasn't necessarily about that attempted fist bump after. I had him ranked as the number 148 player in the NBA last year, and I think he could finish a little higher than that if the Nets have continued team success and if Carroll continues being a veteran force on the offensive and defensive ends. They also drafted 2 European stud muffins named Zanan Musa and Rodion Kurucs. Excuse me if I mispronounced that, but they have nice potential as well. They both can shoot it from the outside, and they don't have to make an immediate impact with the way this team is set up right away, so they have some time to learn, but they've played professionally overseas, and if some injuries happen to happen, I do think that they could step into nice scoring roles. And you also have Treveon Graham, who's a nice hustle guy, fun player to watch. He had a nice season for Charlotte last year. So let's take a look at the front court, and it starts with my favorite player on this Nets team, Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, who I had as a top 100 player last year, and I think he is one of the more underrated players in all of the NBA. He can score on the inside, he's a versatile defender, he has nice size, he improved in playmaking, he improved in rebounding. If he can somehow get a consistent outside shot, which That does need a lot of work, but if he can continue working on his shot to go along with the other areas of his game, I think he has top 75 NBA player potential if everything goes right, if he can stay healthy. I think Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, very low-key, is the best player right now on this Nets team. Obviously, I think D'Angelo Russell still has the higher potential and ceiling, but do not overlook Rondae Hollis-Jefferson. He improved big time in his third season in the NBA, and I think he will continue to make improvements as long as he stays healthy. Also, Jarrett Allen. This guy is a stud muffin. He is only 20 years old. He will still not be legal drinking age all of the regular season. The Nets took a chance on him with one of the few draft picks they've had the last few seasons. And guess what? They made a good pick here, because this guy became a starting center in the NBA at just 19 years old. He has offensive potential. He has defensive potential. And his defensive potential is really scary too. And I think with continued development, at just 20 years old, this guy could make a big time name for himself this upcoming season. I think his ceiling's like Miles Turner, but I also think Jarrett Allen has the potential to be one of the best defensive players in the NBA in a couple of seasons. So I think his ceiling's a little higher than even Miles Turner's is. Jarrett Allen is a for real player. In the current day and age, it is very hard to find a long-term center who has the skills that Jarrett Allen does. I think by the time Jarrett Allen is like 22 or 23 years old, this is going to be a serious force of nature. Okay, you also have Kenneth Faried, who at one time was a top 100 talent. They're taking a chance on him. It could go good, it could go bad, but if it goes good, then that helps as well. Jared Dudley, solid veteran leader, can hit open shots. Probably won't make the biggest impact, but he's a good veteran addition to this team. And then finally, low-key, a big free agent signing I liked was Ed Davis. They got him at an absolute bargain at 1 year, $4 million. I had him as the number 160 player in the NBA last year. I thought he played extremely well on defense. That Portland team did a lot better when he was on the floor. I think Portland made a mistake not re-signing him, and Sean Marks and the Brooklyn front office absolutely jumped on top of that as soon as possible. I think the biggest low point for this Nets team last year was their lack of front court depth. Yeah, you had RHJ, yeah, you had Jarrett Allen, but the backups were Quincy Acey and Timofey Mozgov, and that is a big step for them going forward, because if Jarrett Allen or RHJ somehow gets injured, you've got players who can at least step in as viable backup options. So the Brooklyn Nets have chemistry. They now have a lot better depth than they had last season. Their front office actually knows what they're doing, and Sean Marks seems like a really intelligent guy and seems to be a big-time GM force going into the future. Okay, if Brooklyn was in the Western Conference, they're not making the playoffs. I'm not losing my bonkers here. But that being said, we are in an awkward situation because you have 7 teams who made the playoffs last year who I think will all make the playoffs this year. But you've got an 8th spot that is wide open because I do not believe Cleveland is an absolute guarantee to make the playoffs. I do think they have a chance, but I think the race for that 8th spot in the Eastern Conference is going to be a bloodbath. But comparing all of these teams, I think with the chemistry, I think with the front office, I think with the depth, and I think with the potential some of these players have, specifically D'Angelo Russell, Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, and Jarrett Allen, my prediction is that the Brooklyn Nets will be the number 8 seed in the playoffs in 2019. Do I think they will get to the second round? Absolutely heck no. But I do think this Brooklyn team is going to continue to improve. Their front office is openly saying they want to win now, and I think they have a door that is wide open to shock the NBA this upcoming season. Thank you so much for watching this video. My name is Flynn Patrick. We will be back with more content shortly.